Perkembangan zaman dan teknologi telah mengubah strategi pemasaran di dunia. Pendekatan pemasaran tradisional kini harus bersaing dengan teknik baru pemasaran modern seiring dengan perkembangan masyarakat global. Apa yang harus dilakukan sejumlah perusahaan dan negara dalam menyongsong perdagangan bebas dunia? Anda menyaksikan Insight bersama saya Desi Anwar. Philip Kotler telah lama kita kenal sebagai salah satu pakar terkemuka dunia di bidang pemasaran modern. Buku karangan Kotler berjudul Marketing Management banyak digunakan oleh Universitas dan Sekolah Bisnis di seluruh dunia. Nah, bagaimana perjalanan karir dan seperti apa definisi peralihan dunia pemasaran menurut Philip Kotler dalam buku Marketing 3.0-nya. Nah, berikut informasinya.
Philip Kotler menerima gelar master dan PhD di bidang ekonomi. Ia mempunyai pengaruh besar terhadap ilmu dan praktek pemasaran lewat ratusan artikel tulisannya yang dimuat di jurnal-jurnal terkemuka, salah satunya di Harvard Business Review, dan juga aktif menulis buku mengenai pemasaran. Sepanjang karirnya, Kotler yang lahir di Chicago, Illinois, Amerika Serikat 84 tahun lalu, telah menerima sejumlah penghargaan dan gelar doktor kehormatan dari sejumlah universitas di dunia, salah satunya dari Stockholm University. Kotler merupakan penerima pertama penghargaan pendidik pemasaran kehormatan yang diberikan oleh the American Marketing Associations pada tahun 1985 dan menerima penghargaan Prize for Marketing Excellence dari the European Association of Marketing Consultants and Sales Trainers. Tahun 1975, Kotler terpilih sebagai pemimpin di bidang pemikiran pemasaran berdasarkan survei oleh the academic members of the American Marketing Associations. Dan tahun 1978, ia pun menerima Paul Conference Award dari AMA. Philip Kotler kini menjadi guru besar kehormatan SC Johnson & Son di bidang pemasaran internasional di Kellogg Graduate School of Management, Northwestern University. Meski sebelumnya ia adalah seorang ekonom yang banyak menyumbangkan pemikirannya di jurnal-jurnal ekonomi. Philip Kotler telah beberapa kali mengunjungi Indonesia untuk berbagi ilmu mengenai pemasaran. Dan pada 9 Oktober 2015, ia menjadi pembicara utama dalam Asean Marketing Summit 2015 di Jakarta. Buku karangan Kotler berjudul Marketing 3.0, From Products to Customers to the Human Spirit, menjelaskan mengenai terjadinya pergeseran tren praktik pemasaran dari level intelektual pada marketing 1.0 menuju emosional, dalam marketing 2.0 menjadi human spirit atau mengedepankan nilai-nilai positif dan kejujuran saat menjual sebuah produk pada marketing 3.0. Sufiani Tanjung, CNN Indonesia.
Lalu seberapa penting peran pemasaran dan bagaimana perkembangannya dalam dunia usaha global? Saya berkesempatan berbincang seputar dunia pemasaran dengan Philip Kotler sendiri ketika berada di Jakarta beberapa waktu lalu. Berikut wawancara saya bersama Profesor Philip Kotler.
Professor Kotler, it's good to talk to you again and welcome to Indonesia. Of course, you're absolutely no stranger to this country.
Yes, I'm even on a postage stamp here, and that's a pleasure.
And of course, you know, when it comes to marketing, you are the marketing guru. Everybody's always so excited when Philip Kotler's in town because they said, you know, I remember reading his book as part of my course when I was a university student. So let's just go back to the very basic question of why is marketing important?
Yes, you know, we have a system that creates so many goods and services, but someone has to buy them. And maybe many people would like to buy a lot of things, but they either don't have enough money or certain things are not that interesting. So the role of marketing is to create the demand that will equal the supply of the system. Capitalism is a wonderful system for supplying everything. However, if people don't have enough money or couldn't borrow some money, the system would fail. And by the way, most people don't make an income to even afford a car without a loan or buy a home without a mortgage. So it's very important to do good marketing. Marketing is to get people to do two things: to be interested in certain products to acquire, and to be ready to accept the credit, the loan, to carry out their purchase.
Mm-hmm. Now, marketing itself has been around for over a century, isn't that right?
About a century, but sales have been around forever.
Forever. So, the evolution of marketing itself, how has it evolved since it first started? I mean, you know, you've heard of marketing 1.0 and marketing 2.0 and now marketing 3.0. What is the sort of the trademarks that makes marketing what it is?
Yeah, well, you know, when marketing started, it was just really helping a company make a superior offer. And a company like Procter & Gamble would say, our detergent cleans better than another detergent. There was no emotional aspect, there was more a functional aspect. So that was stage one. 1.0 was to just prove that you have a better working product.
So it's focusing more on the product.
More on the product. And then stage two was more on the customer and the customer's enthusiasm and also the emotional side, trying to produce what we call a high touch with the customer. It's not only a high-tech approach to product functions, but that the customer gets involved in appreciating what it does. And that's stage two. Stage three is that we want also to think that the product and the people who make it care about more than just making a product. They want the society to be a better society. They want compassion to be expressed by the company as well as the ability to make a good product. And
so what stage are we in now?
well, many companies are still in stage one. They just say,
just focusing on the product.
We're going to win if we just make the best product. They're ignoring the role of emotions and attachments and histories of using different products. So I would say the smart companies are at least in stage two. They want to appeal to the heart and the mind, not just a
relationship with the
relationship
customer.
And engagement. You know, relationship is a kind of cold word. You might say, oh, there's a relationship there. Engagement and involvement is more, and that's the language we're using about how to create fans. People are enthusiastic about us. And now, take a company like Apple. They've done a marvelous job. They've created a cult, basically, a following that says, wait, I'll be right there for the next product that you make. So that would be the aspiration of any company, to have a set of people who who are in love with the company. Now, you're not supposed to be in love with the company. You're supposed to be in love with your family and friends. Some companies have been studied. We even asked in a book recently, could you name a company that you love? And people didn't have any trouble saying that. They mentioned a company that they would miss. Like someone would say, I would miss Coca-Cola if it would collapse.
Why is that? Is it just the good ads that Coca-Cola always had? I mean, I still remember, you know, I like to teach the world to sing.
Yes.
I mean, this is something that even if you don't drink the stuff, you
but it
have
may take a different
emotional
form.
Relationship.
Even on Facebook now, Coca-Cola has so many followers because they have set it up in a way that you as a Coke user learn so much about the world and about the company on Facebook. So you can be attached to a company and its brand if you get excited about it.
So would you say that Coca-Cola is a 3.0 marketing, or it's still 2.0?
You know, it actually is, and I'll show you the aspect. They depend on water. I mean, to sell any beverage, they're very concerned about the quality of water and the availability of enough water. So they even have evidence that they have reduced the amount of water that is needed to make Coke. And in other ways, they want to show that they're producing things in a resource careful way, you know, no waste, recycling, and so on and so forth. Even the bottles and so on, they want to take care of.
Now, you mentioned about branding. I mean,
Yes.
where does branding get into it, and how different is branding and marketing, or is one part of the other?
Yeah, you know, that question has come up recently by some people who wrote a book on branding and saying branding is marketing. In fact, branding is the bigger idea than marketing. They are absolutely wrong about that. Marketing is the envelope, and branding is a tool within marketing. And I'll put it this way, branding could only start with a product that you have. But marketing decides what markets to be in, what products to make for the markets, what price to charge, how to distribute, how to clean up, and all that has to be done. Branding is the operation of giving a personality to a product. And that is a great skill, but it's a part of marketing.
Do you see that businesses are now more concerned about their branding, or is this something that perhaps is a different skill that
No, I think most of them, do you know how many books have been written on branding now? 300 books. Many of them overlap with what they say, because there are some fundamentals to good branding. Some of them have a differentiation, a kind of acute approach to how you create a lively brand. But most companies are brand conscious now. Some do a great job of branding. Mm-hmm. But there should maybe be in a company a chief branding officer. But in a sense, that's the job also of the chief marketing officer.
Okay, now that you're talking about job, and then suddenly Steve Jobs and Apple comes to mind. Right. I mean, a lot of the time, actually, the brand, the Apple, is also linked to the CEO, the owner or the founder. How important is that? Because, you know, some of these businesses now and their products are very much linked with the visionary behind it, like the Alibaba with Jack Ma, for example, and Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook.
Yes, and I would add the role that was played that is played by Richard Branson with all of
Virgin.
his 100 different businesses that are all Virgin type of businesses, and I would say Walt Disney was so much the creator of the Disneyland and so on. It helps a lot. Does that mean that someone who's a company CEO who has no personality can't add something? Well, the fact is, he or she should not be adding because they don't have any special personality. But when the problem really is when everything becomes so attached to Steve Jobs, the question is one of succession. And then a man comes along called Tim Cook. And initially the questions are, can he be Steve Jobs? But he's too smart to try to be Steve Jobs. But he's done a marvelous job of taking over business and putting his own imprint on it. Okay,
so where does marketing come into it then? For example, the Steve Jobs, I mean, he's a face, he's the brand, yes. He's also the CEO of the marketing face, so to speak. Now, when you have like somebody like Tim Cook, I mean, where...
He's now the brand.
He's now the brand.
He's now the face. His face, his people in the company make sure that he presents, like, remember Steve Jobs, that once a year with the sweater and the look, where you had to pay scalpers rates to get into hearing Steve Jobs. The same thing's happening with Tim Cook. Everyone's waiting for what he's going to tell you next year about the new Apple Watch and so on and so forth.
But should businesses to be successful have that kind of superstar, the Richard Branson, in order for them to succeed, in order for people to have this relationship with the brand?
Let's say a company is needing a new leader because the other one is not there anymore. In the search for a new leader, I wouldn't make personality the first step. I would really want super competence and maybe some creativity to be in that mind of that person. But by the way, if that person who would be so good running the company, but who has maybe a very negative impact, I would hide him. I wouldn't make much of him, but maybe still leave him to be the CEO behind the scenes. So there's a risk with making a product associated with a personality. And that comes up so often when we have these stars that we hire to, Michael Jackson will sell Pepsi-Cola and so on and so on. And then we find out Michael Jackson, he doesn't really like Pepsi-Cola. And it backfires, or someone who's been advertised a lot embarrasses. So be careful about that kind. You want
But you have somebody like, for example, Lance Armstrong, who was endorsing a product, and suddenly he had this scandal, you know, attached to him, and suddenly everybody just wants to distance themselves.
So isn't it better to really build the brand itself without making it depend on a personality who may come and go?
But how effective are celebrity branding, using celebrities? Because I notice almost all the big brands, they attach themselves, whether it's to sports star, to film stars, or...
Well, you know, there's a science of choosing the right celebrity. The celebrity has to be respected for having knowledge about the product and using the product and believing in it, and then has to have a high score for likability, that person is one people have followed anyways because they're just interested in that personality.
And once they're no longer interested, that's it. You know, you sort of lose interest in the product. Now, what is the main difference now that marketing in the digital era, like we are at the moment, versus the pre-digital era? What are the main differences?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the consumers are now all powerful. We say they have been empowered because in the past, a consumer could only know about an automobile by seeing the ad coming from that company and seeing other ads from competitors. But basically, the consumer wouldn't be looking up the reports of the quality of the company. The consumer wouldn't have a lot of friends to talk to. What is your experience with a Volkswagen or with something else? Today, the consumer is so enabled to be intelligent in making choices. They could go into a store and they're preparing to buy a certain cell phone, and then they hear the price and they say, wait, maybe I can get a better price. They pull out their phone, they check that there's another seller who can charge a lower price. So we got to be much more good and honest with our consumers because they can track us down and know what they ought to know about.
Oh, they can tweet something like, this product is really disappointing.
They can say bad things too, but not. We hope that no one tries to hurt a company by putting out wrong lies about the company. Some of that is happening too. But we do want this phone, most companies in marketing say that the future is mobile marketing, centered on the smartphone.
Okay. So what is the best strategy in this digital era? And do you see businesses adopting this new strategy, or are they still sort of figuring out what is the best way to deal with this?
Most of them don't have leaders who have been from the digital generation because they're older people. Most of the CEOs and CMOs are doing their best to get on top of understanding this. Partly, I have seen companies that would hire a young person who knows digital to sit down with the CEO for 1 hour a week to bring him or her up to date about the digital world. But basically, what I would do, and a lot of companies are doing this, in a company where everyone is the old marketing for communication, I would say take 10% of your budget, hire some young people and say, here, play with this. Go on Facebook. Get a metric where we'll know whether we're selling more because of what you did on Facebook. And if it's good news, we'll give you another 10%. So the eventual budget will be split between digital spending and traditional 30-second commercials. I think we'll get to a point where it's 50-50.
50-50.
Do you know what it is at Procter & Gamble? It's 35% of their budget is now digital budget.
Okay, but the traditional way of doing things, is that still effective?
Yes. Oh, if it
so
went to 100% digital,
that.
I would worry about that because what the 30-second commercials do is they give you a big, warm feeling about a brand. And some of that digital, some of that 30-second is used and makes appearances, and everything else you do digitally. So we call it blending traditional with the digital.
Okay, so don't abandon traditional yet, but you also need to adopt to the digital users. You mentioned VW earlier, and it just suddenly occurs to me there's a scandal going on with the VW, and I mean VW has always had a very good brand. Yeah. What would you advise them in order to revive their brand? Because at the moment,
we would feel better about them to say somehow they got into a mindset that they didn't know about in some cases, but some engineers got them to do that. And if in fact they did know about it all the time, they better leave the firm, those who should have been responsible, or confess to having done it and saying they're sorry, and in any way they could repair any damage, they would do it. And to ignore it, to say, well, that's something, and we're sorry, is not enough. I think they're going to need a whole remarketing plan.
How? How would VW gain that public trust again the way they did before after this scandal?
Well, they could appoint a series of engineers who are experts and say, we want you to examine every one of our products, not just once, but as we continue to develop fine cars for people, to tell the world whether you think we are giving them all that they deserve or not. And therefore, we want to be constantly checked by people that we care now about being very, very careful.
Now, once a good brand is damaged, how long does it usually take for them to bounce back and gain that?
There will be a dip in sales for a while, and it depends on the marketing ideas that they come up with. For example, what if Volkswagen was about to issue a new car that was very exciting? I would get that new car out sooner rather than later. There would be an argument. Some would say wait on the new car because it may be damaged by the feeling people have. Others will say get it out now because it can generate a new image of the company's success.
Mm-hmm. What sort of 30-second ad would you make for VW? Say they don't have a new car or they don't have any new product.
I would make it a confessional. I would level. We don't know how this happened, why it happened. We are absolutely ashamed. We are ashamed of what happened. And we would resent any other competitor who did it. We did it, and we hope no other competitor does it.
Anyway, let's talk a little bit about your book.
Yes.
This is Think New ASEAN, Rethinking Marketing Towards the ASEAN Economic Community. As we know, 2016 we will have the ASEAN Economic Community, where in the ASEAN region we would have the free flow of goods, services, labor, trade, people, money, everything. What would be the implication to businesses in the region when it comes to 2016 and the ASEAN Economic Community? What should they do in order to face this changing global, regional situation?
Every country hopes to sell a lot of its goods to its own people, but very often the population size of that country is not going to support the level of living of good life that they want, just making things for their own people. So basically, international marketing has to be a skill, and then it leads to this question. Yes, there's other countries, but which countries would be interested in our product? Have we even thought of making products that they would like? And should we make products for the world? And that's not the right answer. The right answer is let's make products that are missing from certain countries that we could help receive better products. And in fact, our neighbors are the best countries to do that in. As a matter of fact, my God, we have 10 or more countries around here, the ASEAN community, and we understand them very well, they're neighbors. And in fact, we hope that they sell us some of their products because it gives them the means to buy some of ours. In fact, that's the best situation when there's complementarity. Now, you know, if every of the 10 nations made a car, they would kill each other. But if the Proton is made by Malaysia and another product is made by another community member. For example, South Korea. South Korea decided to be best at making television sets and smartphones. Fine. And they will sell a lot of them to their, those will sell outside of ASEAN, but they will also sell inside. So when I was in Malaysia, they took me to their exhibition center where they have a beautiful floor with 700 of the products made in Malaysia and sent to the world. And they invite people interested from abroad who want to buy Malaysian products to walk around, and they'll see almost everything that Malaysia's able to sell to the other ASEAN countries or the world. So each country should have an exhibition site where they can bring other countries to see what they've been making.
Okay, so but the ASEAN itself consists of, the 10 different countries. Similar in terms of values, we are all Southeast Asians.
Yes.
But on the other hand, we know that, for example, Singapore, and you mentioned Malaysia and perhaps Thailand, very different economically to, for example, Myanmar and Laos and Cambodia, and even with us in Indonesia. Now, how to collaborate on those differences, because we're also competing with each other. Selling the same products, and yet we need to also collaborate in order to face the global or the international market. What's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, it's almost this an agreement to sort things out so not too many people are making the same thing for the rest.
Yes, like for example, us, Indonesia and Malaysia, we're basically making the same thing, selling the same things like palm oil and
so on. You know, it reminds me of the work done in villages in, let's say, in a country where they say each village makes a different product. And it's a product for the country, but it's a product for other countries as well. So I think we should use the concept of a product portfolio. Each country should have a portfolio, and they may understand that if they're selling candy, and many countries can make candy, there's an aspect to the branding of their candy that will probably appeal not to every one of the 10 countries in the region, but those with a sweeter tooth. So I can almost see a lot of negotiation between pairs of countries saying we both make candy, but it's nice, yours isn't as sweet as ours. And we'd get along better because in your country are people who want sweet and not so sweet. So I guess even within a community, there may be bilateral, country to country, understandings that we don't want to make the same exact thing. Now with palm oil is palm oil. A lot of countries will be making it, but maybe at different prices with different textures and qualities.
Okay, and the other thing is this idea of community in terms of marketing. Is there a difference in the strategy for an ASEAN regional-minded strategy as opposed to, the globalization, think global, act local, like kind of mantra?
Well, I always think that the winners are those who emphasize the local, because you may be local everywhere, but by being local everywhere, you're giving a different mix to each local area. Even when I write my marketing management book, I know that marketing is at a different stage in each country, and I will invite an Italian professor to change and make the book relevant to the stage of marketing they're in. So I'm always acting local. I think the best marketing is local.
So
but you get scale economies by making a standardized version. But if you over-standardize, you may not sell it very well.
Okay, so how should one rethink the new marketing for the new ASEAN?
Well, that ASEAN...
That's different to normal marketing in general.
They must recognize that the countries here in the ASEAN region are dynamic countries. They're aspirational countries. They're each trying to improve the lives of the people there. And change rather than stability and conservatism is really what's happening. So I would say that I like to think tribally when I not only locally but tribally, and let me tell you what I mean by that. If you want to sell something to Malaysia, you should recognize that there's the Muslim community, there's the community that is the Chinese community, and the Indian community. Now, apparently, you can't necessarily, even the Malaysian company tells me, they can't make something that appeals to all three communities. So what they do is choose the community, and it may be the Muslim community, and they succeed very well. But you notice that even within an ASEAN country, you've got a tribal level of thinking.
Yes, and you have different types of consumers. I mean, even in Indonesia, you have, your farmers and your fishermen and then you have your workers. But then on the other hand, like you have your executives as well, and then you have your very rich people that you need to serve. So how to make sure that you actually address the right target audience?
Yeah, well, isn't that the beginning of marketing? The first step is always, who do I want to serve? Whose needs do I want to satisfy? With what solutions to what they want? And once you do that, we call that, who is the valued customer? How do you define the valued customer that you're now trying to reach? The second thing is, what is your value proposition? What can I offer to that customer that is a better value than anything else? And the third is, how do I set up the value network that can create the product and deliver it to that valued customer? So that is sometimes called the 3 V's of marketing: a valued customer, valued proposition, and valued network that allows you to put together, for any single customer or tribe of customers, a good offer.
Give us a couple of best business practices of companies that succeed in this new sort of ASEAN environment, or companies that are actually doing things right, that they get the branding right, and they get the product right, and they get their target or their profit or whatever. Give us a few examples of.
Well, I'm looking around, and I am very impressed with what the South Korean companies have done. Here's what Samsung does. Samsung decides that basically it's going to be the leader in television and the leader in smartphones. So to maintain such leadership, they have this idea. Let's appoint some scientists to look at our TV set now and make it obsolete. They just introduced it. It's working fine. Everyone loves it. No, you've got to make it better. So they have a team trying to obsolete their own product. And they're doing it with the smartphone. That's why Samsung is always putting out another feature on a smartphone. So that's a high level of creativity.
Okay, but that's South Korea is not part of ASEAN. Let's talk about, how about in Indonesia?
Yes. But that could be any
Any Indonesian brands that you see a potential that once we are opening up to the ASEAN economic community, that they still can be a big player regionally as opposed to?
Yes, right. We could go to, the fact is that, may I just take as an example Malaysia, because I just returned. Take the Proton car. Now, Proton is a car that they are bought by a lot of the Malaysian people, but it's an example of the kind of thinking that will begin to happen. Namely, they made the car, but they protected the car. And when you have protection, your drive isn't that strong to improve it. And now with the TPP, the trade...
the Trans-Pacific.
Yeah, that's coming up. Proton is reorganizing to make sure that they can produce a high-priced car, a smart car, and not just make a standard car, and make a new product line, because they're going to have to live without protection.
And they have to have non-Malaysians buying the car.
And non-Malaysians, they want, the natural market for the Proton car is all of the ASEAN community. That's their best market.
Although I'm not sure if Indonesians would buy a Malaysian car. That's the thing.
Well, I know, but they would if the car is fascinating. So protection is the worst enemy of creativity.
Okay, so which means is that businesses have to change their ways because the region is changing.
Yes, the competitive factors
the competitive
are changing.
factors changing. No more protection, no more subsidies, no more big fish in a small pond. Everybody has to basically move to a bigger ocean now. How should businesses approach that kind of change? Change in consumer demands. They're much more concerned now with where does your is your clothes, are your clothing sourced sustainably, for example, are the food, organic and so on and so forth. How should they approach changes?
You're absolutely right. More consumers who are now enabled with the phone and so on to demand more of any company, not only that's a nice product, but how is it made and is it good for us or bad for us and all that. You're right. So here's the thing. I think companies, there's a system where we would say if you want to succeed, you've got to be customer driven. You've got to get close to some target market that you've well defined, whose needs you know, and what we say where you have customer insight. But that's not enough because customers keep changing, as you said. So you need not only to be high on customer insight, but high on customer foresight. What does that mean? Namely, customers are going to move towards something else. You got to not just stay where they are, you must have insight and foresight, but not only for customers. Your competitors have an insight into how they behave, have a foresight as to what their next plans are, and then have another thing that's a quality called peripheral vision, because most of us just go right after that customer, but see what's happening outside. So you'll see new opportunities that way. So there's a lot of talk about the guidelines to running a company from a marketing point of view.
Okay, so there has to be greater insight, therefore greater knowledge about the customers.
Yes.
Or what should business do? Maybe have a much a bigger research department or more funding to resources to actually focus on finding out what it is that they need to do and who it is that they're serving and what is it that their consumers are.
The tool that marketers use for a lot of that understanding is been called marketing research. And marketing research tools are getting better and better. Right now, our research into consumers is more of a researching their culture and not just their need for clothes or something. There's a big cultural aspect. So we're asking anthropologists to help us understand customers. Every customer is embodied in a culture. Secondly, we are now seeing how their brains work. We're into what is called neural scanning or neuroscience. So we might be able now to test a certain 30-second commercial with the consumer and watch how the brain waves either don't respond, which means it's a very flat commercial, or it's very exciting. So I want companies to invest not only in the old-fashioned marketing research, which is surveys and yes or no, but in the new means of analyzing customers.
And how to mine this, what's called now big data, because with the internet, with the social media, with Twitter, and all these platforms that are basically, attached to an identity somewhere. How to mine those zillions of information and make that work for you?
Well, sometimes it comes down to forming an equation, which is to predict. There's a thing we call predictive analytics. Will that customer, given our offer, what would his or her probability of purchase be? And if I have this equation, I put in the customer's age, income, and a few other things, and the prediction is there's only a 10% chance that that customer would be interested. I won't even bother with that customer but identify those customers who have a high probability of purchase, given the offer.
But is mining big data an important tool these
Yes,
days for
absolutely.
marketing?
And one way you're mining the data is to try to get the equation that will give you, it's almost sometimes an algorithm, which will yield up those customers who are worth gold to you. I mean, they're ready to buy. In other words, the history of marketing is how to identify the leads, the best people ready to buy what you're making. And we have now the tools through big data to identify them faster.
Okay, just a final question, Philip, because you also written a book called Confronting Capitalism, and the world has changed so much since 100 years ago when marketing first started, and we now have a increasing gap between the very rich and the rest of everybody, the 1% versus the 99%, for example. And how that reality can be, what can marketing, what can businesses do in order to confront that reality and perhaps help in actually reducing that gap, as opposed to creating a world where it's so highly polarized between those who have a lot of money and the rest who just don't have enough?
That's why I got very involved as an economist, because that's my training, in whether capitalism is committing suicide. I think it can commit suicide by leaving so much money in the hands of so few people that the factories will have to close down because people won't have the money to buy what the factories can make. So it's even the responsibility of the wealthy people to want more people to have better pay, a better minimum wage, and to close the loopholes. And I'm not against equalizing. No one feels that a society is ever going to become so equal that everyone earns the same thing. As Winston Churchill once said, if that happens, it would be just the expansion of misery everywhere. There are good billionaires. Not all of them are bad.
Like Bill Gates, for example.
Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and the 134 others who have signed the Giving Pledge that in 10 years they're going to give away half of their money to good causes. So this is not against billionaires, but this is against people who are overpaid. For example, in the United States, we're passing something now that is resented by a number of people. The ratio of what the CEO was paid in relation to the median earnings of a worker in that company, that used to be 20 to 40 times. And that's reasonable for someone to be richer, 20 times whatever. So they're worth 20 workers. Now it's 300 times. 300? 300 is the norm. So the CEO is paid by the stockholders without any second thoughts, 300 times. Sometimes it's like $20 million a year.
It's like coming out from a different planet altogether. I mean,
and there's a conspiracy. It's like it's rigged, and the normal working people and the unions say, what's happening? So right now, the United States, under the Security Exchange Commission, has said, from every company, we want to get what is the CEO paid as a ratio to the average worker in that company. Well, you know what that's going to do? It's going to mean that a lot of the employees are going to be, why is he paid so much? A lot of the stockholders will say, why are we paying him that much? And it will lead some companies to say, some CEOs will say, I'm only paid 100 times, and he's 300 times. Maybe I want more than it was.
So it creates a new envy.
It's going to backfire possibly. But the thing is, capitalism must find ways to raise the people to a living wage. That's all we're asking. And in the United States, where people were earning a minimum of $15,000 a year, that's not a living wage.
Okay, so with all this, the condition of the world, the economy as it is now, with the threats of climate change, very quickly, what's your definition of a good or a great company?
A great company is one that offers great superior quality, accessible, responsive, adaptable, a learning organization, one that has built such trust in their reputation and so on that we can all buy with confidence and actually feel like a partner with that company.
Okay. Well, I think every company should strive to be that.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
It's such a
Professor.
pleasure to talk to you again.
And it's always great to listen to your insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Strategi pemasaran terus berevolusi dari waktu ke waktu. Lalu seperti apa strategi pemasaran yang jitu di era global saat ini? Dan sejauh mana Indonesia siap memasuki pasar global? Sudah bersama saya di studio Hermawan Kartajaya, founder Philip Kotler Center for Asean Marketing. Pak Hermawan, terima kasih bergabung bersama Insight. Nah, kalau Pak Philip Kotler kita kenalkan sebagai guru dari marketing modern ya di seluruh dunia. Bukunya itu sangat mempengaruhi pemasaran, teori pemasaran seluruh dunia. Tapi Pak Hermawan ini tidak kurang luar biasa ya prestasinya. Jadi wajah marketing Indonesia itu ada Pak Hermawan, dan kerjasama selama ini dengan Philip Kotler juga cukup erat ya. 17 tahun bersama, 5 buku sebagai co-writer, co-creator, macam-macam lah. Nah, kalau kita melihat dari evolusinya, dan Philip Kotler setelah saya wawancara dia kan bicara mengenai ya seperti biasa marketing 1.0, marketing 2.0, tapi sekarang ada yang namanya marketing 3.0. Mari kita lihat ya, supaya para teman-teman kita yang di dunia marketing paham apa yang diperlukan di era digital.
Iya, jadi era digital ini paradoks, balik lagi ke era yang dulu sebetulnya. Karena kita nggak bisa menyembunyikan apapun. Dunia ini makin lama makin transparan. Dulu marketing 1.0 itu produk centric. Kalau saya punya produk, saya bilang bagus dan asimetrik tuh informationnya. Customer ini kan kalah sama saya, dia nggak bisa ngecek, nggak bisa apa. Jadi kita pakai advertising, pakai one to many communication, orang dirayu untuk percaya dan beli. That is 1.0. 2.0, ketika customer itu mulai banyak pilihan, kita jadikan dia raja. Kalau tadi target kan raja.
Customer is always right.
Iya, customer is always right, customer apa macam-macam. Ini customer centric sekarang. Produknya hampir sama karena banyak choices. Tapi 3.0 dengan adanya internet, itu kan horizontal. We have to treat the customer as a friend, and treating customer as a friend itu berat karena taking care. Friend itu, waduh,
dan
kita
banyak maunya kadang-kadang mereka ya, punya selera masing-masing.
Tapi nggak boleh kita bohongin dia. Kalau kita bohongin ya susah. Dan to be honest, sebetulnya konsep ini kan dari kita yang memberikan konsep ini kepada Profesor Philip Kotler, dan akhirnya sukses. Dia pertamanya nggak mau, tapi akhirnya oke. Karena ini bukan menggabungkan religion, saya bilang, dengan marketing. Dulunya kan nggak mau, tapi ini kan seperti di Islam dikatakan rahmatan lil alamin gitu, dari Islam yang dimana Nabi Muhammad, maaf ini satu-satunya Nabi yang betul-betul pedagang, businessman, tapi kejujuran zaman sebelum ada internet. Nah sekarang benar semua itu.
Ya, kuncinya itu kejujuran
dan,
itu.
Iya, dan
transparan
secara
ya.
Transparan, kejujuran, jangan menunjukkan apa-apa, dan itu jadi benar pada saat internet datang.
Pak Hermawan, sekarang tips-tips yang praktikal ya, khususnya bagi para teman-teman yang memang bekerja di dunia marketing, jadi apa yang sebenarnya harus dimiliki sehingga ini juga bisa membuat perusahaannya itu bersaing bukan saja di domestik kayak pasar domestik, tapi di misalnya dengan Asean Economic Community dan di pasar global. Ya, apa yang harus dimiliki?
Asean Economic Community, orang banyak ngomong, tapi kan kita sudahlah, Asean Economic Community ini kan people to people ini. Dulu waktu di form kan government to government, G2G, terus B2B, business to business, waktu AFTA, free trade. Ini sekarang community loh, people to people. Bahayanya ini, yang paling bahaya bukan free flow of good, free flow of services, free flow of capital, free flow of people, skill people. Kita harus mau nggak mau nerima ini orang dari ASEAN lain masuk ke sini, kerja di sini. Kita juga boleh masuk kalau laku.
Dan kita manfaatkan untuk meningkatkan teknologi dan ilmu kita sendiri.
Kalau saya bilang ya praktisnya, kita ini orang Indonesia tahu bagaimana memarketingkan produk kita, diri kita, perusahaan kita kepada orang Indonesia lain. Bertahan di Indonesia, jadi tuan rumah di Indonesia udah bagus, nggak usah nyerang keluar. 240 juta kita jaga dengan cara apa? Dengan cara yang namanya H2H, human to human. Jadi the spirit of 3.0 itu harus ke human to human. Kalau mau berhasil, tip praktisnya, itu understanding the human spirit of the new Indonesia. Apa itu the new Indonesia?
Apa yang Pak Hermawan lihat?
Unity and diversity. Keluar kita Indonesia, tapi ke dalam memang diversity. Cobalah orang marketing itu hidup di dalam culture-nya yang ada di situ. Kecemasan dan impian. Ini kuncinya sekarang. Jadi,
yang 3.0, kecemasan
iya,
dan
3.0
impian.
itu anxiety and desire. Jadi bagaimana, umpamanya saya boleh menggunakan apps, teknologi, but I have to use my technology, masuk sosial media untuk mengetahui tanpa tanya. Di sini sebetulnya senangnya apa? Kecemasannya apa? Tiap orang punya kecemasan, punya impian, tapi nggak ngomong tuh kita. Nah, ini kuncinya kemenangan. Nah, orang Indonesia kan mesti tahu anxiety and desire orang Indonesia sendiri. Umpamanya, kalau dia sering upload makanan-makanan seperti ini, ceret, upload. Kalau wow kan, upload, oh ini. Dia kemudian komen ya terhadap sesuatu, nge-like sesuatu, oh dislike, marah-marah kalau terhadap sesuatu, nggak usah tanya. Dari situ kita bisa ngelihat, oh sebetulnya dia punya kecemasan kalau terjadi begini, makanya dia marah-marah.
Terima kasih banyak Pak Hermawan. Jadi marketing 3.0, anxiety and desire, kecemasan dan impian ini harus kita lihat. Dan kita harus tahu cara menggunakan social media yang baik. Pak Hermawan, terima kasih banyak. Dan terima kasih juga telah membawa ya Philip Kotler untuk kesekian kalinya ke Indonesia. Dan pemasaran memang merupakan kunci untuk menciptakan keseimbangan dalam dunia usaha. Globalisasi dan pesatnya perkembangan teknologi pun harus diikuti dengan strategi pemasaran yang jitu. Seperti dikatakan oleh Pak Hermawan, tidak hanya sekedar menekankan pada kualitas produk, tapi juga membangun keterikatan emosional dengan pasar, human to human, sehingga akan tercipta dunia usaha yang bersaing, sehat, dan masyarakat sebagai pasar yang cerdas. Saksikan kembali Insight besok bersama saya, Desi Anwar. Bye-bye.